Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I know, it's been a while. I just finished my first year of college, so I had to finish that all up and then move out and stuff, and now I'm taking summer classes, and it's been a whole deal. But today we're going to be talking about AMD's upcoming Ryzen 3000 processors, because we finally have basically all of the information aside from the actual performance numbers from third-party reviewers. That we'll get soon. We'll talk about that in a second. We're not going to talk about the new GPUs, just the CPUs. That's a little more my area of expertise. It's what I'm studying, so yeah. So most of you guys are probably already aware of what was announced, but for the rest of you, here's what we have so far. And, a good recap. So new Zen 2 architecture built on 7nm node. AMD has been big about that. 7nm, 7nm, 7nm. New I/O and chiplet design. Again, for this information, I talked about it more in my CES video. But some of the new stuff we have is they're claiming a 13 to 15% increase in single-threaded performance achieved through IPC uplifts and frequency uplifts, which we'll talk about more later. A 15 to 20% increase in multi-threaded performance. Again, these are just claims from AMD. We'll have to wait until official launch to know exactly how much of this is true. Double the cache and double the cores. And then they've introduced a new Ryzen 9 on top of Ryzen 3, 5, and 7. And its naming's a little confusing, but we'll get to that later. New PCI Express 4.0 on X570 platform. So we got new details about X570, about the details regarding PCIe 4, which again has double the bandwidth over PCIe 3. And then we have a release date, so July 7th, which is a Sunday, but it's 7nm. Again, really going with that 7nm. So AMD announced most of this stuff at their Computex event a couple weeks back, or at their CES event a while back, but most of the new stuff was at Computex. A couple things were announced at E3 last week. I personally wanted to wait until we had all of the information and give myself a little bit more time to kind of collect my thoughts and organize them a little better. Also, I had class and work taking up time. So first things first, let's talk about the specific models that were announced at the two events this month. So first we have the Ryzen 5 3600 and 3600X. These are the 6-core models with 12 threads each, 3.6 and 3.8 gigahertz base clocks respectively, and then 4.2 and 4.4 gigahertz boost respectively. Both have 35 megabytes of cache, so definitely an increase in cache levels, running at 65 and 95 watts for $200 and $250 respectively. So looks pretty good. Basically my takeaway here from these ones over their predecessors in the 600, 600X line is pretty decent frequency boost, a lot more cache, but they've maintained the TDP, so that is good. Next we've got these Ryzen 7 3700X with 8 cores, 16 threads, 3.6 to 4.4 gigahertz, 36 megabytes of cache, probably getting a little more on the L1 and L2 side from the extra cores. This one's running at 65 watts for $330. So this would be a replacement to like the 1700 or the 2700. With again, just, those frequency boosted, especially in your boost clocks. We're seeing well above 4 gigahertz now, which is great. And in the cache without increasing TDP. Next, we've got the Ryzen 7 3800X. So this one seems like it's more of a direct replacement for the 1700X that I have personally in my personal rig, or the 2700X, that's what they compared it to in their presentation. Again, 8 core, 16 threads, 3.9 to 4.5 gigahertz. That is pretty impressive if I do say so myself. 36 megs of cache at 95 watts or $400. So might try to get my hands on one of these to compare directly from, your first gen 1700X to your third gen 3800X. See what kind of improvements we've gotten. But we'll see about that. Now, this is where things start to get really interesting. So because of new design with 7nm and the new chiplet design, a lot of people at CES noticed that there's a big gap on the CPU package where you could fit another die with another 8 cores. So people are like, okay, maybe we'll get higher core counts. And here we have them. So that's the new Ryzen 9 series where we have the second core chiplet. So we have the Ryzen 9 3900X with 12 cores, 24 threads, 3.8 to 4.6 gigahertz, 70 megabytes of cache at just 105 watt TDP for $500 in the AM4 socket. That is impressive. I kind of want that instead of a 3800X. So let's see, that's a really nice looking CPU. But we also at E3 got the 3950X, which is 16 cores, 32 threads, 3.5 to 4.7 gigahertz, 72 megs of cache, again, 105 watt TDP for only $750. The caveat, though, is that this one is coming in September, not in July with the rest of the lineup. So I'll have to wait a little bit for that one. So here are my main takeaways from these new models. So higher frequency. So first and second gen Ryzen on their 14 and 12 nanometer nodes respectively had some issues passing the 4.1 gigahertz, even with a good overclock. It just wasn't really feasible. A lot of that is due to the process node that they were using. Some of that was due to some architectural quirks, things like that. But now we're passing 4 gigahertz easily, getting up to 4.7 gigahertz out of the box. Now, yes, I know that's the boost clock. It's only going to be on 1 or 2 cores, but we should be able to get a decent all-core overclock well above what we were able to get last time. So clearly that issue has been fixed. How much of it is by going to 7 nanometers or just the new architecture? I don't know, but it's good to see that we're getting higher clock speeds now. Also, IPC improvement. Obviously, not all of the performance increases that they're claiming are going to come from frequency. I mean, frequency it's a decent boost we're getting, but it's not everything. So actually, a lot of people, myself included, were kind of worried over the last little while that AMD wasn't going to be able to give a significant enough increase in this generation, and they'd kind of have these slow incremental improvements, kind of like their competition. They kind of had that with their second gen. That's what we expected. They said, okay, Zen Plus is just an incremental architectural improvement from what we learned from first gen. Zen 2 is going to be the new big changes. A lot of people were worried that we'd still only get a few percentage points of IPC and then a little bit of frequency, and that would kind of make it look like it's a little bit of a boost. But no, it looks like we're actually getting a decent IPC uplift. IPC is instructions per clock. I should have mentioned that. So we're seeing, yeah, definitely a decent IPC uplift, which will help a lot in single-threaded performance. So frequency and IPC will definitely help with those. And actually, AMD is claiming to now be able to beat the competition in gaming, which was one of the few tasks where they fell short. So not only are they going to be the cheaper option, but they're also the better option and at a lower price. So it's just a win-win all around. If that holds up, we'll have to wait for third-party reviews to confirm, but if that holds up, that would be absolutely amazing. But we're also getting great multi-core improvements. So it's not just, single-threaded performance, but multi-threaded performance seems to be increasing as well. Obviously, with single-threaded performance, once you multiply that to more cores, you are getting more multi-threaded performance. But it looks like we're getting even more tweaks on top of that. So that's probably due to architectural changes for the most part. Separating the I/O and the chiplet die allows them to do things a little differently. Also, increasing the cache levels can definitely help with that. So it's really nice that we're seeing, and not just even high core count models, we're seeing high core count models, but we're also seeing in the same models very decent performance bump in multi-core performance. Again, we'll have to wait for independent testing on July 7th to really confirm the extent of this improvement, but I'm still excited. And we're also getting higher core counts. So that's another thing. AMD has been known for kind of pushing the boundaries of core counts with their first gen Ryzen. They're like, okay, we're going up to 8 cores on our mainstream platform. And so now this time around, they have, a shrink to 7 nanometer. They have a reorganized core design. They're able to push up to 16 cores on the same platform without even increasing TDPs. They're still just at 105, just like they were last gen. So that's great. They're just pushing the boundaries of what's possible just because they can. So yeah, again, a lot of people notice that little gap in the CES pictures, and we are getting confirmed Ryzen 9 will have that gap filled. So I'm really excited. I'm kind of debating whether or not I'd rather get a 3800X, which is, kind of a direct successor to what I have currently, or the 3900X with that 12 cores. That looks nice. So we'll have to see when the time comes. So another new thing we got was more details for the X570 chipset and the motherboards that would be supporting these new Ryzen 3000 processors. So it will, when paired with a Zen 2 CPU, support PCI Express 4.0 with double the bandwidth of PCIe 3. Now, one thing that was clarified is, so back at CES, a lot of people were theorizing, okay, well, electrically, PCIe 4 and PCIe 3 are basically the same. So if you have a short enough trace, you should be able to, on maybe like, the top slot of an older high-end motherboard, get PCIe 4. And AMD was like, yeah, no, definitely it's possible. We're looking into it, blah, blah, blah. But now it's looking like it's not going to work. It ended up being a lot more electrically complicated to add in PCIe 4. And that's also resulting in some of the price increases that we're seeing with these new motherboards. Speaking of older boards and compatibility. So that was a huge thing that AMD's been touting this whole time since the launch of Ryzen 1st Gen. They're like, support for the AM4 socket, drop-in compatibility through 2020. Even at CES, they personally told me that I would be able to update the BIOS on my X370 board and just drop in a new Ryzen 3000 chip when it came out later that year, or this year. But unfortunately, that is no longer the case. So due to new technical reasons, including power requirements for the higher core counts, which it's important to note that TDPs are staying the same. That doesn't necessarily mean the same for power draw and power consumption. Power delivery is not going to necessarily be the same for these higher core counts, nor is the consumption. So some higher end older boards could handle it, but a lot of older boards just can't. And then another thing is the BIOS chips on a lot of, especially first gen motherboards, less on the second gen motherboards, are just so small it would be difficult to try to fit the firmware and the microcode for all of these generations of CPUs from Bristol Ridge, first gen Ryzen, second, third, all the APUs, etc. It wouldn't fit on those small BIOS chips. So newer boards don't really have that issue, so some high-end X370 boards, for example, could meet the requirements for compatibility, but it's just not enough where AMD is comfortable officially supporting it as a whole. So their official position is if you have a 400 or 500 series board, you will be able to have drop-in compatibility for Ryzen 3000. 300 series boards, if you have a nicer high-end X370 or some B350 boards, may get selective compatibility through beta BIOSes. It's just up to the individual manufacturer. MSI has said that they're not doing it, so for me personally, it doesn't really matter. I need a new board anyways. But yeah, so we might see some higher end boards get maybe limited compatibility for Ryzen 3000. It really just depends. We're not going to see anything right away, and I wouldn't get your hopes up too high if you have a 300 series board and we're wanting to upgrade. So it is really annoying that they've kept touting this whole time. They're like, yes, compatibility. And I don't entirely blame them that they can't do it. Honestly, I don't believe AMD is being malicious or they're just trying to get us to buy new boards. Honestly, from the people I've talked to there, from my communications with AMD, I really do feel like they're not an evil company. They do want what's best for the consumer, but they also don't want to advertise something as compatible when you're not going to get a good experience. Also, because that's going to reflect poorly on them. So I do believe them when they say that there are technical reasons they could not make older boards compatible. They're just not comfortable certifying that whole lineup is compatible, and especially speaking for all the different motherboard manufacturers. So while I'm very sad that it's not going to work, a little annoyed, I'm not going to be too mad at them. Other than that, X570 doesn't look like it's getting a ton of new features. Besides PCI Express 4.0, that's really the big thing that it's advertising. I mean, it has some updated I/O support, although I think some of that is just the name branding for USB 3.1, 3.2, whatever it is now. Nothing other than PCIe 4. There's nothing really noticeable that's new. But other videos have made full breakdowns of the changes. I think Gabriel Nexus did a really good one. One noticeable change, though, is the higher TDP of the chipset. So normally a chipset will sit, 3 to 5 or 6 watts. And it's fine. You just slap a heatsink on top of it. make sure you got, good airflow in your case and you'll be fine. But this is also the first time that AMD is actually custom designing it in-house. They're not just having a company like ASMedia do it. It has higher numbers I've seen range from 11 to 15 watt TDP. So that's the same TDP that the processor in my laptop right here has. That's from Motherboard chipset. So it's going to be sipping on some power there. And I think it goes without saying that most motherboards are going to have fans for the chipset. And there's going to be a great selection of boards. Most major manufacturers are having like 5 to even some have like 10 boards. AMD says something I think along the lines of 50 boards available at launch. In a variety of form factors. We're getting some nice ITX, some ATX, I think like a couple extended ATX I saw, micro ATX. We're getting all sorts of form factors, all sorts of feature sets. I'm personally partial to Gigabyte's Aorus lineup of boards that they announced. Some of those look very nice. The last thing I want to address is Threadripper. So there have been a lot of rumors that since now we have up to 16 cores on AM4, that Threadripper is dead. Which is completely stupid. It's completely idiotic. First of all, second gen Threadripper had up to 32 cores. And then Zen 2 based EPYC will be going up to 64 cores. They've already announced that. So we're probably going to see 64 cores on Threadripper. Just saying. Also, the main point of Threadripper was never the higher core counts. I mean, yes, that's one of the benefits you got, but the main reason you went with the Threadripper platform was because it was more of a prosumer enterprise-grade platform. So obviously AMD's not going to get rid of Threadripper as a whole. That's just stupid. But where I'm a little confused is the naming. So previously the number 900, so like the 1900, 2900, and all of the little iterations like 920, 950, 990 have been reserved for the Threadripper line. So you have your increments of 100 for your AM4 platform, and then once you get to X399, you have your 2900X, 2920, 2950, 2990, etc., etc. Assumed to be the same thing here, 3900X, 3920, 3950, and so on and so forth. But we now have Ryzen 9 with the 3900X and the 3950X being on the mainstream AM4 platform. Is AMD just going to squeeze all of the Threadripper SKUs between 3950 and 4000 exclusive, of course? Like that just doesn't really make sense to me. Are they going to come up with some entirely new confusing naming scheme? So yeah, generally that's kind of my thoughts from the new information that we've got. Of course, we're going to have to wait until July 7th for official reviews and everything from third parties. You should always take AMD's numbers or companies' numbers in general with a grain of salt. If they're saying, oh yeah, we're getting X improvement, they probably cherry-picked their tests to get the best of the best. But knowing AMD's track record, it's probably safe to say that it is going to be somewhere in that ballpark. So I'm very excited personally for the models, especially the 3800 and 3900X I've mentioned. I'm really excited to see where this is going and excited to see where it's going to go in the future. If you guys have any thoughts, leave them in the comments down below. I want to know what you guys think about the new lineup or any of the points that I've made here. You do agree, disagree, let me know. Comments down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one, and hopefully, as soon as I can, a review of the new Ryzen 3000 processors, because I do plan on getting a review by some way or another at some point sooner rather than later, hopefully. So make sure you stay subscribed for that. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.